So,
Thank you for inviting me.
oh, and there we are, we're recording. And so our first question for you both is, what is the impact that you're seeing already on the issues that you work on with our new administration?
So since my speaker is on, I'll start. Again, thank you all for inviting me to be a part of this conversation because it is definitely a very needed conversation. So I would say the impact of this has been different. Because this impact, like so when you're organizing, you're on the ground and you're fighting, most of the time we kind of sort of know what our fight is. We kind of come in, we have a kind of a somewhat clear understanding of what it is that we're about to fight. We've looked at it. It's been laid out. There's been a lot of strategy around it. What's going to be our approach? What's winnable, what's not winnable. Because I believe all of it's winnable. But they're like we kind of know where we're going. So when I think about the question being what has been the impact, I would say that the impact and what has made this impact so great is uncertainty. There is so much uncertainty. So there is so much is on the line, right? But there is so much uncertainty right now. And so that uncertainty, because that uncertainty is being fueled by misinformation, lies, um, just overwhelming information. It's just an onslaught of stuff. Things are being questioned. So every single thing that we know is being questioned right now. So it is so much uncertainty that it is really hard for me to say what is the one direct impact. People have questions that they need to be answered. I remember last week, a week or whatever, the first week when all this insanity started, I won't even go to where the real insanity started. But when we got to the new year, and then there was all of this fund is going to be cut, this is going to be cut, this is going to be cut. Okay, everybody was like, "Oh my God, I'm not going to have benefits. Oh my God, who's going to pay for my medication? Oh my God, what's going to happen with my housing? Am I going to be without a place to live next year? Are we going to have access to even self-managed abortions? Will HIV medications be paid for? What happens? Do I die tomorrow?" So there was so much uncertainty. So that's what I mean when I say, "Oh boy, my." So if my thing is saying that my internet is getting unsteady, so I'm gonna probably jump on my phone to make sure that we be okay. But that's where I feel like we are right now. When I look at the impact has been so much uncertainty, and people don't know where they can go and where they can go from help and what is the fight going to be. And so as organizers on the ground, we've literally had to stop, regroup, reorganize, figure out what is the fight? How are we going to fight this fight of uncertainty, lies, misinformation, and attacks? Because so not only are we being attacked on the ground, then the thing that we thought we had some semblance of allowed us to operate in some way of normalcy, that's under attack. Everything is there. So the impact has been fear, uncertainty. Where do we go from here? And how do we really organize against this foe that we've never really met before? Oh, we've had the liar before. We've had lies before. This is a whole different ball game we're playing right now. And so that's been the impact for me. I won't say it's been the feeling of being overwhelmed. Those things have been there. Me as a lead, as an organization, that this is what we do. We are used to being attacked anyway. Where do I go from here? How do I continue to lead this organization? And then the uncertainty of funders. I have to say that. I feel like people who fund us are quite uncertain right now. They are not sure where they're going to put their money. How's it going to look? Are we going to even give money? So it's that thing that that we're impacted by our sustainability. How long will we be able to sustain ourselves to continue to fight this fight?
Thank you, Marcia. I really
And I can talk
appreciate
some more
that.
later, but that's where I am with you right now.
Yeah, and I'm just the thing that I wrote down that I really appreciate you saying that we don't even know what the fight is. So I know we've felt that, as we were preparing at our organization for the year. So Sarah, what are you seeing? What
Yeah, no, and thank you, Marcia. I think you speak so vividly to that feeling of onslaught that I think everyone is feeling of, from what we're seeing from the new administration, just this feeling of like, how do we even attempt to counter it? I'll speak a little more specifically about the impact on the climate work, since that's what Mothers Out Front focuses on. Um, and specifically what we're seeing is, a real a overall attack by the Trump administration on environmental protection and climate action writ large, and an attempt to roll back all the progress and momentum we've built for a transition to clean energy. Transition that we know is inevitable and positive and cost effective, but we see these, attempts with, as Marcia said, lies, misinformation to attempt to roll all of that back. Specifically, we're seeing this attempt to dismantle the Environmental Protection Agency, which is responsible for issuing regulations that would actually implement laws passed by Congress that protect our environment and our natural resources and human health. The EPA also doles out a lot of funding to state environmental programs. So, it's not just about reducing the size of government in Washington, it's about real impact in our communities around the country that rely on their EPA regional administrator and those program funds for things like climate mitigation and protecting natural resources and human health. We're seeing rolling back, as I mentioned, rolling back climate regulations, um, opening up land for permitting for oil and gas. It's all under the guise of energy independence. But we know what that really means is push oil and gas profits as high as they can go at the expense of everything else that we know is better for humanity and for our planet. Um, we're seeing funding being frozen that had been issued through the Inflation Reduction Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act. So this is funding that was awarded for clean energy projects. And that's had an impact specifically on the work of our teams because a lot of the work they do in their communities is getting their school districts, for example, to transition to electric school buses. And part of what we use as those resources that we're bringing to school districts is look at all this funding that the federal government has made available to make this transition. So by freezing that funding and rolling back a lot of funding and trying to claw back funding that's already been awarded, as you said, Marcia, puts a lot of uncertainty into that landscape and makes those efforts harder, though not impossible. But those incentives have been very helpful in making the case to local governments and school districts about the benefits to switching to clean energy. However, I would say the flip side to this is that it's created a sense of urgency and highlighted the importance of organizing at the local and state level, which is where we focus our energy already, because that's where we see the biggest impact. That's where we have the most power over our decision makers, is at that local level. So we're seeing a lot of energy around that, a lot of need to get involved. So that helps build our movement and make long-lasting impact.
Great, thank you both, and I really want to echo about the local because for many years we've known on definitely on climate issues that things were not going to go through Congress. So they have, we're seeing tremendous gains at the local level. Cities and towns who make a big impact on this issue are becoming net zero in many places. So that's the work to all of this organizing that's been happening. So I'll have Sarah start the next question. So that Marcia, you can have a break as the first person. But wanted to ask about you and other climate organizers. How are you organizing in this moment? what has shifted? Are you trying different things, or, what does it look like for you in the next 6 months or so?
Yeah, I think our focus is really about shoring up that underlying foundation of community organizing skills and that empowerment for our communities. So to do that, we're really using this moment to get back to basics, which is about growing our membership, running strong, winnable local campaigns, and training our members to be the most effective organizers that they can be to protect their kids and their communities. So one way we're doing that is just helping people see where they have power. As I said, that's really at the local level, over their local decision makers, whether it's their mayor, town board, school district. And so it's really continuing the work that we've been doing with local community teams of moms, and just sort of shoring that up and building up the skills base of our members. And I'll just give a few examples of work that our teams have been doing, that will continue. Um, so some of our teams have focused on school districts because there tends to be that natural connection when we're organizing moms and the schools. So we've had success getting some school districts to start the transition off diesel fuel to electric school buses. We've seen success in getting schools to start switching to electric heat pumps instead of putting in new gas when they're renovating their school buildings. Teams are working on getting their schools to put in solar, and this is all a result of just showing up and raising their voices and organizing with other moms. Because even if schools, want to do the right thing anyway, sometimes they don't know what that is. And it takes some people just speaking up to show them the way forward, and to put some positive pressure. And another value we see in terms of focusing on schools, as many of our teams do, is that it puts us in a natural community with other organizations that are also working on other issues, but that are focused on the health and safety of the learning environment for our kids. So it's a chance to support other groups as well. We have a team that has convinced their county legislature, and this is even with the Republican legislature, to start a waste reduction program because the group highlighted the alarming pollution issues from their local incinerator. We have teams working on transition off gas. A lot of that work is being done in Massachusetts. They're working on neighborhood electrification efforts, transitioning to clean heat. And we have teams in multiple states working to oppose new gas infrastructure, like fighting power plants and pipelines. Our teams also, so they work at the local level, but they also work in coalition at the statewide level. So our Massachusetts teams succeeded, as part of a coalition, in passing sweeping climate legislation in Massachusetts recently that will help transition that state off fossil fuels. And something similar is happening in New York right now. We're working on something called the New York Heat Act, which would allow the utility companies to transition off fracked gas onto clean energy alternatives. And doing that kind of coalition work helps our members see that they're not alone. It's not just their own community team. They're like in community with so many other organizations that are pushing for the same thing. And it also amplifies their voice. And having a victory at the state level, can be really transformative, not just for that state, but it has ripple effects because it can influence policy in other states as well. So even though we're talking about local work, it really does bubble up when you build power, through these grassroots local teams. Um, Another thing we're encouraging our members to do, because of all this craziness happening at the federal level, is to make their voices heard to their congressional representatives. Um, Specifically on the topic of preserving the federal energy tax credits, because those fund things like solar and geothermal and energy efficiency. And the point is to give the message to our representatives that our schools are going to miss out on millions of dollars to improve their school infrastructure, to save money in operating costs, and to make a healthier learning environment if these tax credits go away. And that's something, even if your congressional representative doesn't particularly care about climate change, you can make a strong argument that about the financial impact to their district. By highlighting what have the impacts been in your district through climate events. Like where I live, we don't typically have wildfires in New York, but we've had them this past year. And that has caused real damage financially and through human lives, as well as extreme flooding. So bringing those issues to our representatives' attention is something we're organizing our members to do. And lastly, I'll just say that we're working on shoring up our national training infrastructure. So training our members and supporting new groups that are forming around the country of Mothers Out Front, because we know that moms in general are really committed to improving their communities and will put in the time and resources to do that. So it's worth it to have to invest the time and resources to building up their skills and helping create those connections between moms to strengthen their work. And that is important. That type of investment is important right now specifically, but it's also really important over the long term. Because, who's in power will change. But what's important is having that foundation of power at the local level so they can withstand those changes and be ready to stand up to protect their communities when a crisis comes up.
Those are all really fantastic examples. I really appreciate that. And investing in the ground continuously. Also, we know that helps turn out voters and pays dividends in many years to come. So appreciate hearing that work. Marcia, hopefully your internet is more stable. Tell us about how you all are organizing right now.
So what we know here is what we do work. What we do work. So what I mean by that, we will continue to build people power, right? Because what I solely believe is that the power is literally in the hands of the people. The people have the power. What we got to do is make sure that the people know that they have the power. And so when the people are constantly faced with things that they don't feel like they have control over, they really do have control over it. We have to remind them that you do have control over this, that this don't necessarily have to be forever, that it's right now. And so how do we get past right now? So that is the thing that I want to say. What we do work, it worked. So we're not going to start running around trying to change programs to match this madness that's happening in the world right now. We can't do that. We've got to be stable and we've got to be consistent in what we do that work. And so what is that? We're going to continue to educate our community. We're going to continue to make these connections. We're going to continue to help people understand that the real power is locally, and then the power moves from there, and then it's state, and then it's federal. We're going to continue to have those conversations. We're going to continue to make sure that people are being registered to vote. We're going to continue to make sure that people know that no matter what they say, that there is power in the polls, and we're going to make sure that that happens. We're going to make sure that people know that their needs are going to be met. We're going to challenge them. We're going to still do what we've been doing. We're going to challenge them at the core of their conflicting line messages. So what do I mean by that? You absolutely cannot keep saying that you're going to redo the government and you're going to get rid of waste when you're wasting, and you're wasting at the cost of human lives. When you say that you are pro-life, but you're okay with people dying, we're going to let the public, we're going to let the community know that that's what's going on, and we're going to challenge them at that. We're going to challenge them at the core, because I personally believe that a lie can't stand. But it will stand if the liar is the only one with the information. And so we're going to continue to do what we do. We're going to continue to power the people, because that's where the power is. What we're going to do is we're going to continue to build stronger. We're going to continue to build stronger cross-movement coalitions. Because for far too long, while we are a reproductive justice organization, people sometimes get confused and they think that our only dog in the fight is making sure that folk have access to abortions. I thank you. That is reproductive rights. And that is absolutely a real thing. But reproductive justice is a deeper fight than that. And reproductive justice absolutely is climate control. Reproductive justice is all of these things. And so we're going to work very intently with these people who are on the ground doing amazing work and helping them to understand that we have got to all come together and do this work, because we are fighting for our human rights. That we are fighting, yes, we're fighting for social justice, but we're fighting for our human rights. We are fighting to survive, and that is very important. So we can't stop doing what we were doing. We were already combating lies at the very core of where they are, and so we will continue to do that. We will continue to bring people in who did not understand that they had a dog in this fight, because maybe it was a person who's like, I'm not going to have any more babies. Okay, they don't mean anything, but you do know that you have a right to things that you are supposed to have a right with until you die, because you have a reproductive life until you die. We are going to make sure that we are standing elbow to elbow, aligning ourselves with folk of trans experience to let them know that this is absolutely not the way it is supposed to be. And we're going to help our people, our community, to understand. Don't allow them to make you fight against something that they will take from you tomorrow. Because if they said that kids of trans experience cannot participate in sports, then they'll tell you that you can't participate. So we are going to continue to attack the lie. We have been attacking the lie, because I believe if you dismantle the lie, then we'll get to a place where we can fight. And so we're going to continue to fight in that way. We're going to continue to make sure that when they said that people do not have access to full reproductive health care, they're also saying that they're okay with people dying when they decide to birth. So we're going to fight for the right to make sure that people get to birth and get to birth safely and have access to health care, so that not only do people who are birthing die, but also their children don't die either, because maternal mortality as well as infant mortality is a thing in a state like Texas. So again, I will keep going back to the fact is that we're not going to change what we're doing. We're not. Change why? We're still fighting the same insanity. We just fight it on a larger level. So that means that we're going to fight hard. We're not going to stop what we're doing. We can't stop what we're doing. In 2023, because it's 25 now, we held our first Texas Black Women's Reproductive Justice Advocacy Training, so that we could take community to the state of Texas to advocate for the things that is impacting our communities the greatest. Guess what? We're doing it again. This is 2025, and we're still going to have an advocacy training. And the goal is that we're going to be able to train even more advocates, and that we're going to be able to reach people who did not know that they had a dog in this fight. And we're going to bring them to the table with us, and we're going to meet them at the state of Texas, like we have been doing since this has been an organization, with the information that they need to know. And we go cross lines. We're bipartisan here. I'm not trying to fight a Democratic fight. I'm not trying to fight a Republican fight. I'm not trying to fight an independent fight. I'm trying to fight a people's fight. That's what we are going to do here. How do you help us do this? Be a part of our training. Meet us at the Capitol. Help us to understand what your fight is, because we're all fighting the same fight, so that we can build a stronger fight. One of the things I love, and I'll end with this, one of the things I love that when we talk about people of color or women of color, and the fight that we have, and people have tried to make that be Black or white or Hispanic or what, all these different colors that people tend to show up as. No, it's a people fight. You get to absolutely have this of color, people of color, and all this kind of fight, but you also get to go home and be Black, or you also get to go home and be white. You also get to go home and be whatever it is that you are. But when you bring a marginalized group of people together, we're always going to look different. We're not going to be one color. We're not going to be one race. We're not going to be one group. What we do have in common is that there is this power structure that's been put together to try and control us and try and harm us with these systemic harms that they bring about us. And if we all come together and fight them together, we are bigger than they are. And it don't matter what color that we are. It don't matter what our gender is. It don't matter any of these things. If it is in opposition of that very small number of people who have the greatest amount of, who have the perceived greatest amount of power, then we will be greater than them. And so that, and I love that. It's a way we talk about it sometimes in the reproductive justice movement when we talk about women of color and where that frame came from. It had nothing to do with who your race was. It had to do with the fact that there was a whole bunch of women in a space who were being oppressed by the same system, white patriarchy, that was oppressing them, and together collectively we could fight that thing. And so that's the way we got to be. So that's what we're going to do here at the Abyss, and we're going to keep on fighting. We're not going to change our fight. Now, it may look a little different, but we're going to keep doing what we do here. And we're going to stay consistent. Because I know that consistency wins. So that's what we're going to do. And we need y'all to do it with us.
Thank you. I love it. I love it. I love you saying, what we do works and we're going to keep doing it. And I also appreciate that we're all in the same fight because we try and divide. And that's what they're trying to do to us, is divide us and instead of being all in the same fight. So thank you. I'm going to end, and I'm going to have Sarah go first again. I'm hearing that many people are feeling overwhelmed with how they can help right now. And, you both said there's so much uncertainty and misinformation. So, a lot of people are like, I don't know what to do. Like, what is going to make a difference? How can other support organizers, how do we bring other people into this fight?
Yeah, I mean, like Marcia said, get involved, come to trainings, come to a team meeting, bring yourself, bring a friend. I think taking action is the greatest antidote to all this anxiety and all this anger. Um, you finding a way to channel that into community and into action together makes such a huge difference, both in terms of actual impact and also in terms of our mental health, and not letting someone else dominate the narrative, right? I mean, I so feel what you're saying, Marcia, about like, we know it works, we're going to keep doing it. We're not going to let them change how we're fighting. And that's what we have to focus on. Like, we know the right thing and we do know what the truth is, and we just have to keep pushing forward with that. Um, I think that whatever you feel like your lane is in the fight, like find that group and get involved. And there is so much crossover between these different lanes too, and ways that we can support each other. So if you are part of a nonprofit that you feel like, well, there's a great way we could partner, with Mothers Out Front, for example, on something, like that's an awesome way to get involved. We have online actions you could take, in-person actions. I also recognize that not everyone has the time outside of work to give a lot of spare time to volunteering. So, financial support is also really valuable in terms of reinforcing the long-term work that's necessary to build up this movement and to build up our community power. Um, and if working with like moms and caregivers is your thing, or you fall into that category, then like we would love to have you as part of our movement. And I will put in the chat, we're having a national call on March 4th, which is going to outline the programming and strategic campaigns that Mothers Out Front will be running over the next few years. So I'd love to invite people to participate in that. And also just want to speak to the idea that, like, I think before the call, Laura, you were saying that some people are saying like it feels like nothing is happening. Like, no, because we're not seeing mass protests in the street. And someone else has mentioned that to me too. Like, why isn't anything happening? Like, no one's doing anything. But then I heard from someone else that the congressional office lines have been constantly tied up with people making phone calls. So that to me was so reassuring, because even if you don't see it, there is so much happening. So whether or not you're just making calls to your state legislators or your congressional representatives, or you can actually get involved in this type of community work, anything you can do really makes a difference. And to find other people to do it with just makes it more enjoyable and a more joyful process, so that you're not alone.
Thank you, Sarah. Marcia, anything to add?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. Just don't, I just want to say to people, be overwhelmed, but don't be discouraged. I just believe in the will of the good people, and work with us. Find ways. I don't want to like repeat what's being said. We've both dropped a couple of things in the chat. I know that for years, I've always been told, well, you don't ever ask for money. Now I'm sorry, y'all, we got to ask for it. It takes money to do this. Like, we can't do it without money. And you may think that like a little this or a little that. Yeah. So like, you may not be able to come to all the meetings that we go to. You may not be able to come to all the trainings that we go to. You may not be able to do all of those things. But if you can support those things happening, then that means that the people who need it, or the people who want it, because we all need it, will have opportunity to participate in it. I know we're having a summit. Hoping somebody will be able to drop it in there. A summit. The summit is next year. We're having a gala. It's a fundraising gala. And we know a lot of people probably won't be able to come, right? But we also know there are people here who would love to be here. And the gala supports our HIV work, the work that we do with Black women living with HIV. And it's just this amazing opportunity to support. And so you may live in New York and you say, but I can't, I'm not going to fly to Dallas to come to a summit. But here's the cool thing about that, a gala. If you buy a seat, we literally give that seat to a person living with HIV or a person of trans experience that probably would not be able to purchase the seat, because we know fundraising tickets are not cheap. That's why they're fundraisers. And so, but we also want to make sure that the people who would love to be in those spaces get to be in there. And so we don't just do this with our fundraising galas. We do this with everything that we do at the Athea Center. Our birth work is done that way. We work with people who want to have a birth team, who want to have doulas, who want to have midwives, but they can't afford it. And so we depend on donations to be able to pay the doulas, so that mothers who want a doula but can't have a doula can have one. We scholarship. We work with a couple of midwives, and so we're able to scholarship and get them to work with us with a fee they can afford, because they got to live too. And then we're able to pay the remainder of that fee. So there are so many. So I don't want you all to just think the only way to help organizations like ours is to be on the ground fighting all the time. Yes, we got to be on the ground fighting. We got to be making the phone calls. But while all of this fighting is going on, y'all, remember, we still got to help the people that we sit here to help. We still got to make sure people get clean water. You know, we still got to make sure the babies are born safe. We still got to make sure that people living with HIV get access to the health care. We still got to make sure that these things happen. So in the process of us fighting, our service work still have to happen. It still have to happen. The people that we serve, and they have not stopped calling us to serve them. Even in the midst of confusion, we still got to pay people rent. So that's what I would say. Reach out to us and see how you can help us. And there are so many ways, and I say this in the end, there are so many ways that you get to help us that feel good. Like, you just might be wanting a feel good moment right now, in spite of all that we're doing. We spend feel good money too on the people that we're working with. So continue to work with us, help us. If you live in Dallas, if you don't, whatever, our work is online. Our advocacy work is virtual. It's also in person. So join us, meet with us, get with us, help us, and continue to support us. And don't be afraid to support right now. We need you more than ever.
Thank you. And Marsha, I appreciate it, because we just did our first ever gala, and I know that people really just appreciated being together and being in community, and that brought a lot of joy. So that's really important. And because some people didn't attend, it meant that we could have organizers attend using their seats. So that's really crucial. Just a rapid fire question for both of you, because hearing stories about philanthropy pulling back, because there's, just all of the stuff that, are we going to go against the DEI or whatever it is? What's the blowback? So what are you guys seeing? And this is like philanthropy, don't abandon us, right? So tell us what you're seeing.
It's scary over here where I live. It's real. I mean, seriously, I may smile, but we haven't, like, I'll use an example. When 2021 happened, when Senate Bill 8 went into effect in 2021, people were just like chunking money at us. It had started with George Floyd uprisings, which started a whole lot of these people wanting to be so, oh, we are going to make sure we're DEI, whatever. And so money was just coming, and our funders was reaching out. We know you're funded for next year, but we're going to make sure you get this money this year, and we'll come back again because we know you have a fight to fight. Well, we ain't heard nobody say that this year. I've literally not really heard from my funders, the people who fund this organization. I think over the last week or two, I've gotten a couple of emails from some folks saying, hey, what's going on? Let's jump on a call next week or next month and see what it is that you need or see where you are. So I believe that funders are kind of skittish right now. It's like, don't want to do the wrong thing, don't want to do the right thing. We sit in a very interesting position here because I'm real clear that a lot of our funding happens because our work is unapologetically Black. And that feel good for people, but did it really feel good for people, or did it look good for people to say that they were funding an unapologetically Black space? Now that they don't have to fund an unapologetically Black space, then what does that mean? So I have to think about all of that. So funding has been interesting, to say the least. Conversations with funders has been interesting, to say the least. But I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up hope. And I'm going to say that, because just like we having to get it together and we having to like regather, everybody's having to regather. So yes, I don't really have anything so negative to say about it, but it is a scary time right now. I'm not like a lot of people who got all their funding from government agencies, where that's really like, whew, where do we go from here? But even with philanthropy, even with that community. So I think this would be an amazing time for donors to step up, you know. But yeah, independent people with independent monies or whatever. So it's been interesting. I'm not going to say I'm scared, but I am concerned.
Yeah,
Anything to add?
yeah, well, I would definitely echo that. That it is definitely the time to step up and channel philanthropy to this type of work.
Mhm.
I think what we've seen is that there was a lot of focus on electoral work from
Mhm.
funders, and that really drained resources from our movement because there's such a sense of like anxiety around that, and like, okay, we have to chase that now to stay on top of it. But I think what this has shown, what everything has happened has shown, is like you need to stay the course and fund this like underlying long-term work that needs to be done that's going to protect us from any shifts in the electoral landscape.
Great. Thank you to you both. Really appreciate your insights and also just your sense of, I mean, it actually feels like hope. I always get fired up just knowing that we're not giving up. And to hear your stories is definitely buoying me at this moment. So I want to give a chance for us to move into two breakout rooms. We're going to share with everybody after the event the video from AJ, so you can hear from organization working with trans asylum seekers and their perspective on both trans issues right now, as well as immigration and asylum seekers. So the questions we're going to have you in the breakout rooms answering, just so you guys can have it in your head, especially the introverts who need to mull on things for a minute, is just what are you excited about what you've heard, or how are you working with movement organizers right now? And then the second thing is, what do you want to do as a result of this conversation? So what do you want to commit to? So I want everybody to have something to do when you leave today. So we're going to send you to rooms for 10 minutes. It's not a lot of time, but at least to start the conversation. So we'll see you back at about 5 after 1. I'd love to hear from the room that Jessa was facilitating on just some of your takeaways and what you heard in your conversation.
I can start, but others, please feel free to jump in because my notes are not exhausted. So, I think there's a lot of excitement about what others are doing, and everyone had a really strong commitment to keep on doing what we're doing. We're excited to hold elected officials accountable. We're excited to increase the follow through of the folks that we're talking to make sure they don't just register to vote, but to go out and actually vote. But we ended on a really powerful note of, we have to face the real grief and danger of the moment right now as well. We have to be realistic about how well certain strategies have worked and be able to kind of evaluate and pivot on the fly. So it was a really great conversation, and I'm super thankful to you all. Feel free to add in anything I missed.
I think you caught everything. I think the bottom line, most of us talked about that we're going to continue what we're doing and maybe do it a little bit more. And actually, it was good to hear that there's still some fears because we don't talk about those things. And recognizing that we're going to deal with people who still have fears. We all have fears. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So I will chime in for the room that I was in, but then please, everybody else add in, because I don't want to be the voice of this powerful group for sure. But I heard folks saying that they want to create more partnerships. So, there was a lot of conversation about the cross movement and how we can do that better. How do we make sure that this work is funded and make sure that our organizers aren't showing up for a million calls and not being able to raise money, but taking their time to be here with us, but still not getting funded. So we want to make sure that these groups, and you all have informations, we'll send it out, their links, but for those of you who can donate, let's throw some money into the work that they're doing for sure. And then we talked a little bit about just building hope and how it is really important, building hope and the connection to youth power. So what am I missing, y'all?
I think that was probably it, because we really had we really went into deep conversation with that and talking about the really amazing work that people are currently doing and going to continue that.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And one of our members talked about hooking up locally with Indivisible and just all of the events that are happening in different groups. And I know I put a link to some of the Indivisible in the chat. So yeah, let's keep showing up in the ways that we can, because we all have different things that we bring to the world and can bring to the world. So some of us have the time to do the organizing and some of us don't. So and also to give ourselves grace that we're not alone, and we can't do this alone, or feel the responsibility of the whole movement on just our shoulders. So do what you can and maybe try and do a little bit more, but we also have to take care of ourselves. So I want to thank everybody for joining us this afternoon. We are going to send you the video that was created by AJ so that you'll have their information. We'll send out some notes as well as the links that have been in the chat. Our next session, I don't have the date in front of me. Sophia on our team is always really good about this. But our next one is going to be actually, which we planned way in advance, but about DEI and philanthropy. Besides all the executive orders, there was also a Supreme Court case last summer that organization that was funding Black women-owned organizations was sued and had to reverse what they were doing. So there's a chilling effect that's happening in philanthropy, and we want to have a conversation about that and also update it in this current moment and all of the things that are happening nationally as well. So that will be our next session. We'll make sure that you're on that. We ended a little bit early, so you get a little bit more time back in your day, but I'm want to just if folks want to unmute and cheer for our two speakers, I want to thank Sarah as well as Marcia for joining us today and lending your voices, your experience, your expertise.
And clap.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
ladies.
All right, and I also just want to call out Jessa McCormick from our staff who does our grant program. So she's someone that folks should know and know who she is. And thank you for facilitating a breakout group. And then last but definitely not least, Sophia Trifone from our team communications, who is doing all of our behind the scenes work and is off camera so that she can focus on the behind the scenes. And then sliding in from the West Coast is our new executive director, Alistair Millillan. And we're so thrilled to have Alistair leading this organization into what's next for us. So thank you everybody for being here. Have a great rest of your day. Take good care of yourselves and lean into hope where you can find it, because we're in for the long haul, not just for the next day, 12 hours. It feels like 10 minutes with this administration. So keep plugging those phone lines. Take care, everybody.
So much.
Bye. Thank you.